Yes, good morning. A warm welcome to all of you, and also from my side, thank you very much for being here and not partying as hard last night or partying hard but still being here this early, so thank you. As you can see, I'm up here alone. My colleague and the leader of our research group, Martin Czuczynski, is missing. I'm sure you know why, or you can imagine why. We're still living in pandemic times, so he apologizes and he sends out his greetings to all of you as well. So I'm trying to improvise and take over his part, though of course he will be missed. So I will talk about platform work. What a surprise. But no, I will not talk about platform co-ops or the work in platform co-ops, which is the focus of the conference here. Oh, thank you. Instead, I will start and kick off the day by talking about the evil ones, the evil non-cooperative platforms, as we could say. So we're talking about platforms such as Uber, Lieferando, Amazon Mechanical Turk, or Upwork. And they have become an integral part of the world of work today. But first, when I talk about platform work, what do I mean? So the term itself covers a wide variety of paid activities that are mediated via app or internet-based infrastructures. One key characteristic is that platform workers are self-employed and paid per assignment. Although this is slightly starting to change as well, as we see even food delivery platforms such as Lieferando starting to employ the workers. So as I said, the character of the platform itself as an organization is not fixed, but it can be organized as a cooperative, which is why we are here today. Nevertheless, the majority of platforms, they are non-cooperative, and they evade many of the obligations that employers normally have. So work on these platforms is often characterized by poor working conditions, low wages, and a lack of social protection. And yet, we see many people taking up work on platforms, on non-cooperative platforms. So why do they do that? What are their expectations and their reasons for doing so? And how do they actually perceive the working conditions? Of course, it's impossible to answer that within 10 minutes, but I hope to share some of the findings from our research. So one key distinguishing criterion of platform work is the extent to which work is geographically tethered, so to what extent it's location dependent or independent, and thus taking place in a shared physical or regulatory context. In our research at the Berlin Social Science Center, we focus on the working conditions and work organization on location-independent platforms, which we call crowd work. So people who perform jobs such as photo tagging or software programming entirely online. Just to tell or let you know a bit about the data that we are using here. So we've done interviews and case studies, and aside of that, the data I will primarily be using today, we've conducted a survey with more than 1,000 crowd workers who are based in Germany and the US. And I would like to share some findings that I believe are also relevant for the platform co-ops. So first, let's take a look at the reasons and expectations. Why do people perform this kind of work? Why do they use this work model? The findings show that for the vast majority, it is primarily an easy access to income opportunities, often as an additional income aside another employment. So if I had a pointer now, no, I do have a pointer, I learned. You see here, additional income and access to earning opportunities as a central and main reason. I want to add, though, that the strong sideline character also indicates that for many, the primary income is no longer sufficient. But then we also see another central reason, that is the desire for more self-determination and flexibility. So as you can see here, a large majority express the desire to have no bosses and to decide for themselves when to work and where to work. Again, I want to add that behind this desire for more self-determination, there's also often the necessity for flexibility. For instance, we found that especially women in the US express the need or the desire for flexibility because of care obligations. So of course we also have other reasons, such as trying to develop skills, but what we see overall is that the reasons for performing this work model are quite ambivalent. On the one hand, we have the need for income, but on the other hand, we also have the desire for more independence and self-determination. So against this background of wishes and expectations, what problems do they encounter along the way? What are they satisfied with and dissatisfied with? Overall, our data, we have to say, of course, this is kind of general overarching data, not being analyzed by specific groups or other kind of socio-demographic factors now. But overall, our data shows that platform workers actually do perceive this work model as an opportunity and are quite satisfied with it. Nevertheless, there are also many problems that are repeatedly being raised. So first, it's the ongoing problem with low and insecure payment. Second, the non-transparent processes and power imbalances. So people often don't know how decisions are being made, and there is often a lack of opportunities to voice complaints. Third, there's always also frequent complaint about the permanent performance evaluation, especially by ranking and reputation mechanisms. And a final extremely important point that I would like to draw your attention to, that I would like to highlight, is at the lower end of this graph. It's the extreme dissolution of work boundaries. So we see that a large majority reported to work in the evening, on weekends, on vacation, depending on the task availability. And this is highly problematic when, first of all, keeping in mind that it's an additional income aside a primary job, and second of all, when taking account of studies that show that permanent work activity can lead to psychological stress and burnout. So, I want to go back. Anyways, I leave it now. So how can we change the working conditions on platforms when they're non-cooperative? Of course, the most important step will always be workers organizing themselves and fighting back, and for us to support them. And we all know about the extremely great struggles of Lieferando, Foodora, of Deliveroo, Foodora, Lieferando, and Gorillas workers. And we have Sylvie Delacroix here, who has been involved in the Lieferando struggles. But in addition to that, I would like to report on the Fair Work approach, which tries to not only research the working conditions on platforms, as for example I do, but they also actually try to actively improve them by taking on an action-oriented approach to research. It was established at the Oxford Internet Institute, and actually one of the Fair Work, or a person of the Fair Work team is not here yet, but will be in the afternoon or in the morning session, working conditions in the co-op economy, Matthew Cole. And we have part of the Fair Work team sitting also in my research group at the Berlin Social Science Center now. So the Fair Work team consists of 25 country teams, and their core idea is to use the data on the working conditions to benchmark platforms in order to actually put pressure on them. So here you can see the 5 criteria that Fair Work ranks and evaluates the platforms on. So they're kind of doing a public shaming and naming. I will not go into them, but what you can see, the gist of it is that many of the issues they're addressing, of course, is also what I showed you in the data, what the main problems and hardships of also crowd workers are. And the approach is actually starting to bear some fruits. So individual platforms such as Glovo Platform, they actually signed a pledge to improve the working conditions for its workers along the Fair Work standards. But of course, we know that such voluntary standards are hardly put into practice in reality, or they're only in part granted from above because it seems profitable to the company. So we also need a regulation of platform work. And first, this regulation needs to clarify the status of platform workers. In many cases, they only appear to be truly independent. In fact, many platform workers are actually dependent on these platforms as regards the income, but also as regards the control and job allocation systems. So in many cases, they should be treated as regular employees, and here political control must definitely be stricter. But second, there will also always be an area of platform work that cannot be treated as regular employment. As we've seen, self-determination, flexibility is one central reason for people to perform this kind of work. But here too, regulation must ensure minimum standards, we believe, such as protection against dismissal, social security in case of illness, but also opportunities for interest representation. So I'm probably already running out of time, so let me just leave you with 4 lessons learned that I would like to pass over to you at the beginning of this day, as me studying these evil platforms, but not really being involved in the co-op community discussion. First and foremost, platform work raises the old problem of social protection and labor rights. They have deteriorated not only because of platforms, but they are particularly trampled all over by them. And platform co-ops really have to make a difference here. So we're talking about social insurance, accident insurance, occupational health and safety, but also about notice periods, minimum wage, and unionization, for example. A second issue is the question of radical transparency, not only transparency, but radical transparency of co-determination, even self-determination. As we've seen, this is a central desire, a central expectation of platform workers, but it's also one of the biggest problems on non-cooperative platforms. So transparency and co-determination should not only be a phrase, but I believe it's something that needs to be produced again and again in the daily process. And ultimately, as I showed in our data, the dissolution of work boundaries is an ongoing problem of today's world of work, and particularly furthered by platform-mediated work. So this is also something that we need to take into account, we need to take seriously when addressing working conditions on non-cooperative platforms, but also cooperative platforms. Thank you very much.